Hi there, I'm Kim Komando. I'm the host of the nation's largest radio show about everything digital. You know, all those gadgets and gizmos and consumer electronics. I also talk about online security and privacy. And my goal is to educate the consumer about what happens online. So in order for the radio show to be possible, we have relationships with companies and with advertising agencies. And our goal here at the Kim Komando Show, whether it's offline with network radio or online with all our digital assets, is to educate the consumer so that this way they will activate and actually purchase the advertisers' services or products. Now, we're so selective about who we allow to even advertise on the network. And that's why I'm so thrilled to introduce you to somebody who has worked behind the scenes with us. And she's just brilliant. She knows everything, I think, about not just offline marketing, but also online marketing. She's got that intuition that is so rare, but as a host and as a business owner, I just embrace it every time Mary calls and says, you know, here I am, and I've got a brand new client. I'm like, oh, Mary, thank God it's you. And so here's Mary McCarthy. Hello, Mary. Thanks for joining us. And Mary owns a firm in Boston by the name of MC Consulting. Her clients range from small companies to large companies that maybe you never even heard of. But the whole idea between the relationship between the host and the business owner and the property is to develop programs and strategies that actually enable the advertisers and the consumers to really say thank you. And we hear thank you. Thank you for telling us about this product. So Mary, let's get started.
Okay.
So how did you come to do what you do?
Well, I went to school for marketing and actually, fell into a career that I went to college for, which is rare these days. But I never understood like media. You see ads, you hear ads, and you never think that someone's behind putting them there. But fresh out of school, tough to find jobs, found myself on the sales side first, and then really got to work with a lot of ad agencies in the Boston area and decided that's where I wanted to go. Spent 20 years working for agencies and media and have seen it change. When I first was in the business, there wasn't internet advertising. It was all traditional. So that's where I learned the ins and outs of the offline, TV, radio. But today's media world is so different.
Now, of course it is. It's changed tremendously.
Yes.
I mean, we've gone from, I remember when clients would say, can I run a banner ad? And now it's like, you really want to just run just a banner ad? Because when's the last time that any of us have actually said, oh, that's a banner ad, let me click on it?
Right.
So we have to get more creative, but also more impactful to make sure that the client's dollars are truly spent effectively.
It's not only media that's changing, but it's the consumer's the path to purchase that's so different. It used to be you'd see an ad and it'd be buy now, and you'd walk to the store, drive to the store, and you'd buy it. But now there's so much information available that there's even, I think every purchase there's an average of 5 Google searches. From anywhere from toothpaste. So people are searching for information. They're much more educated than they were about any purchase. So how engaging is a banner ad? It doesn't really give you the opportunity to tell you a lot why you should engage with the product or brand. And I think working with, the Kim Komando Show provides such a wonderful opportunity for our clients because it combines content, the message, the research, right to the call, not like the call to action, the buy now. So it's a full funnel marketing program.
And that's important because when we take somebody like Kaspersky, and we've also worked on Carbonite. And I remember when we first started working on Carbonite, like years and years and years ago, is that we had to explain to people about what is an online backup.
Right,
okay?
right.
I mean, this is like 12 years ago, and everybody's like, no, I have my external hard drive. We're like, no, external hard drives are just not good enough. You need to have it in the cloud. Well, what's the cloud?
Right.
And then people were getting all nervous about giving their information out to the cloud, and maybe the hackers and the crackers and somebody, I remember they asked if somebody at Carbonite wanted to see their files.
Right.
It's like there was like some engineer would be like, oh, I want to look at Mary's files, so let me see, where is it on these rates? But it was all educating.
Right.
And I think that's interesting that we were doing this like
10 years ago.
Yeah, 10, 13 years ago.
Right.
And now it seems to be kind of the trend as we move forward.
Right. We were doing native advertising when people weren't calling it native advertising, and that's where the message and the content, really come together. But I'd say that working with Komando, you even take it a step further, because I think in marketing in general, sometimes marketers, they have to work from an objective, of course, a campaign objective, but I think it gets disconnected from the mission of companies sometimes. And so, often you'll get a call from an agency and they want to talk about impressions and click-throughs, and you need those metrics because, measurement is important. But when I work with you, you always want to know, for your audience sake, how is this changing the lives? Like the mission of Kaspersky isn't to get a click-through rate of a 0.07. It's to save and protect people's data, right? To make people safe, to keep them protected. And you always get right to the heart of that. And that's where the message is about the mission of the company, not just the campaign objectives. And I think that's what makes working with you different.
But I think it's so interesting, though, like talking about Kaspersky, that there are so many people that have never heard of Kaspersky.
Right.
But yet it's a $700 million a year company. And when you first called and said, what do you know about Kaspersky? I'm like, I have that K right on the top of my bar. I happen to use Kaspersky. But it's also, making sure that the product is good for the consumer.
Right.
And testing the product. And because the worst thing we can do is give something to a listener, and it's just not perfect. It's just not good. Because then there'll be tremendous backlash. It'll hurt your brand. It'll hurt my brand. And so, but getting back to the native advertising, and I don't know if a lot of people actually understand what that is. And can you explain it for just a second?
Sure. Well, native is a term that's being used left and right in the industry right now. And people are defining it in their own ways. And sometimes it's just putting an ad, like in your news feed on Facebook, they'll call that native advertising because your ad looks just like, your friend just posted that they're eating birthday cake, and then your ad comes in and it's the same format in your news feed. So that is one level of native advertising, but that's on the very weakest end. It's more when you're integrating and your message seems more like the environment, native to that environment, and not an ad. Not just a starburst flash buy now. It's not an interruption in programming or interruption in content. So it's supposed to flow from the content. But there's embedding, but then there's really integrating. And what you do is integrate. And I think there's a lot of embedded advertising out there that might have a look and feel, but it's not like what we do together, where you take the time to learn the brand and understand what's going to be important to your audience, and then we work together to come up with what those points are, because that's the real magic.
Yeah, and it is. But a lot of the stuff that we cover is actually, I'll take like a letter from a listener or an email from a listener where they'll say, do I really need security on my Mac? Do I really need to have security on my iPhone or my Samsung Galaxy? And then to answer that in a way that, you can get free security software, but here's what you're not going to get with that. And then there are other competitors, and here's what you're going to get with them. But this is the one that we've tested, and this is the one that we recommend. Now, we should also state that anytime that you do see sponsored content or native advertising on my site, is that we do say it's sponsored content.
Absolutely.
It's always full disclosure, because I've always been a big proponent of that. Because this way there's full transparency. And there's that trust that, okay, yes, they are a sponsor, we know it. And, believe it or not, we've gotten kickback from some people. So, do you need to really say that they're a sponsor? Do you really need to say this is a paid advertisement? And the answer is always absolutely yes, because we don't want to deceive anybody as we move forward in all these campaigns. That said, what do you think, if somebody's watching right now and they're like, okay, well, I can't afford the Kim Komando show, or I can't afford this type of campaign. Is there something that people can, like if they're smaller, just starting out, would it be like maybe sponsoring like a podcast, maybe to get started, and maybe to do some sponsored content maybe along that way, or some native advertising? Absolutely. You can build your way. There's all different forms. Actually, the newsfeed ad on Facebook is a very efficient way. And I don't know that it adds credibility to your brand, like partnering with the podcast or partnering with the Kim Komando show, but at least it's an engaging ad message that's breaking through the clutter. How does on Facebook, is it cost per click or is it cost per thousand?
You can buy it multiple ways. So, you want to figure out what it is you want that consumer to do. Sometimes it's a click to learn more. Sometimes it's a click to watch a video. Or sometimes it's just getting your message in front of those eyes, which can be purchased on a cost per impression. So they're varying pricing models.
What is the pricing with that? I mean, so like I know it's hard to say because, how targeted it is, the price goes up.
Right.
But on a general basis, and we say cost per thousand, and if you don't know what that is, it's cost per 1,000 or CPM.
Right.
Can you give us a range of what you're seeing out there?
Right. A lot of times working with my clients, I like to do cost per click because then somebody has raised their hand to say that they're interested, they've taken an action, so it eliminates your wasted dollars. And our campaigns run anywhere from a 30-cent cost per click up to $1. So if you're doing a B2B and you're trying to reach HR directors at global, Fortune 1000 companies, that might be $1 a click because it's such a niche audience.
Right.
But, if you're selling hamburgers, you can probably get, a 25-cent cost per click, especially if you have a coupon or a strong call to action. What's great about the cost per click is all the people that aren't interested aren't clicking and you're not paying for them. So it's very efficient.
We like that.
Yes.
Now, are you doing any type of work with Google Ads and bidding on anything?
Oh, absolutely. I with search marketing and Google, that's when somebody's already been led to your door and they're knocking. If you're not doing Google search, you're not answering the door, So you've really wasted. That journey has come right to you. And there's a big question on should you buy your brand names? Like, should you be buying the name Kim Komando?
I don't know. We've talked about this before, and you say I should, and
Yes.
I'm still not, but
Yes.
maybe I will.
Yes. Well, it's your brand is your name, so it might be, every situation is a little unique, but, different brands, other people can bid on your name, so you can get lost.
That's true.
Your organic is going to come below paid search. And if anyone has been on Google before, you kind of can see what the paid ads are on the top. Or there could be a story about you that buries your name. So do you want to wait till there's some sort of a press or something going on that's going to bury your search? And when you buy your brand name, it's usually very efficient. So Google protects people so that, if I'm Rush Limbaugh, I'm not going to bid on Kim Komando's name and drive your price up. They don't want a bad experience for people that are searching. So their algorithms will make it very difficult for someone to drive so that, it costs you $5. That's also pay-per-click. So it costs you $5 to buy the Kim Komando name.
So how much does it cost per click on Google? For Google search.
If you're buying what we call a brand term, so that's, your name is in there, it's a very specific search. I mean, it could be 10 cents per click. If you're buying auto insurance, it could be hundreds of dollars. Like if that's the term, auto insurance, because that's a very competitive field. So it depends on the category, how many searches there are out there, how many people, and you're bidding. So you're like bidding against people. So, you can bid for the top, the highest person gets the top position, and then the lower your bid, the lower you fall. You don't want to necessarily fall on page 2. Most advertisers like to be in the top 3 positions.
So now that everybody's moving towards mobile search, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then I saw something yesterday that a millennial dad is doing 60% of his searches on a phone for parenting tips. I read that yesterday and recipes and things like that. How does that affect the advertiser, knowing that nobody's sitting behind a desktop computer anymore? We're all looking at our phones. We're all looking at a tablet. So what does that mean to the advertiser?
Right. I mean, being on Google and mobile is very important. And people are on their desktop at different stages. I think going back to what that path to purchase is really understanding someone's steps, If you're making a decision on where to go to lunch, it could be just that, as Google calls it, those micro moments. I'm hungry. Where do I want to go to lunch? They're going to open their phone and say, Indian restaurant near me, right? So near me searches are very high right now. And you want to be there in that micro moment when someone's making a split decision. If it's a more complicated purchase, there are different stages. So you want to be on mobile with one message, but maybe your research can be on the desktop as well, right?
Yeah, that's true, because people are still, I have a desktop. I go, and if I'm going to be like buying airline tickets, I'm not doing that on my phone. I mean,
Right.
I'm going to go on my nice big screen and go to Google Flights and then go to all the individual websites to see, okay, how can I get the best deal to Hawaii?
Right. Right. So, just understanding what those moments are and what you're like. I do a lot of work with in education, and especially students today are on their mobile phones.
Oh, sure.
Probably more often than not.
I know,
more
my
than they're
son,
sleeping.
it's like,
right.
I'm like, can we have like no screen time just for a second? No.
Right. But when it comes down to putting their application in, they're not going to be doing the transaction from their mobile phone. So when you are talking to the Apply Now, it's mostly on their desktop. But when you're trying to get them to watch a video of a student experience, so they're like, hey, I want to have that experience too. I'm interested in going to the Eisenberg School of Management. Those videos can go on mobile. Video is another thing that's crazy. Yeah.
Video is
Lots
crazy.
of video.
Everybody's watching videos because people don't want to read anymore.
Right.
And so that's why, we built this whiz-bang video studio, because I kind of see that's where the trend is going. So like where we used to always count page views on websites and then try to extend it out. So it'd be like, instead of like one page view, there'd be 2 pages. So we'd get that, is that now everybody is watching videos.
Video.
And, where do you put the ads in the videos? In the beginning, and then people are, then make them, like Google, you can't skip them.
Right.
Okay, and then you're like, oh, and then you sit there and you wait for the skip ad.
Right.
And so I've always wondered, how effective are those ads?
It depends on how people are measuring. I think, there's one example, and I forget what brand it is. I think it was an insurance agency that came up with the best 5-second ad, knowing that people were going to skip it on YouTube. They made it a skippable ad, because I think once you give somebody the permission to skip, and then you take that away, people get aggravated. So just like what you were explaining when you're on YouTube, it's like, oh, I can't skip this one, I have to watch it. Where if you're on a player where pre-roll is always part of the experience, like a Hulu, you're more accepting, because it's just part of the experience. All right, and you understand, like, okay, in order to, get this great content, I'm gonna have to sit through an ad. And ideally, because with digital technology, you can marry your message to audience behavior. Like, hopefully that message is interesting to the person on the other side of it, so they're going to be engaged with it, more. Measuring audio video is a little bit challenging, though, and I think that people want people to react like a banner ad, but it's more of an awareness that's going to have a shelf life of, you hope a month, versus a banner ad where people either click or they don't click, and then it's gone. So I think as the industry has to get better at showing the value of video advertising. Television, certainly people understand that, but online video, mobile video, advertisers, are still wondering, like, oh, is this working for me? And I think
so this is where advertising is today. Native ads, content marketing, radio, television, and then you've got all your internet apps and video, and it goes on and on and on and on, newsletters.
Yes.
Where do you see it going in the future?
I definitely think that as everything is on demand now, that consumers are going to be wanting their messaging on demand too. So I think as the industry progresses, data and is going to become more important. You are going to be like native marrying your message even more so. Like right now, when you put an ad into television, everybody sees that same ad at the same time. But I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we get to the part like with online video, we might be both watching the same show, but you've just searched for cars. You might get an ad for a car. I've just searched for cat food. I might get an ad for cat food. So I think there'll be a lot of technology kind of fueling where the messages are. Like right now, too, we spend a lot of time researching who that right person is, right? Like up front, before we even place a dollar, you want to make sure you don't want to waste anything. But technology allows you, if you cast a wide net day one, you can learn who's responding. You don't need that upfront research, and you act and react in real time. And that's already happening now, with optimizations. But I imagine that is going to spread across the whole industry. I see pricing changing. And
how?
So there's programmatic, another buzzword, programmatic. Everyone's talking about programmatic, and this is two things that fuel that. One is technology, right? And knowing who the audience is and what their behaviors are and marrying their behavior to your message to try to get that right. But the other is bidding on that. You know, what is that impression? What is that ad worth to you?
Might be worth more to me than to you.
Right.
And then I'm going to drive the price up because it's worth more to me.
It's going to be worth more, and
Right.
you're going to have, you know, not necessarily a person sitting there and figuring it out, but algorithms figuring out that, hey, if I put an ad on a news program on a Wednesday at 12 noon, I'm going to get 10 times the response. So I'm going to pay 10 times more than on a Saturday at 8 a.m. in a comedy.
And see, and that the data analytics part, it just fascinates me.
Yes.
I mean that, you know, like if Facebook says, like, if you put a food video up on Wednesdays, you mentioned Wednesdays, is that food video is going to go crazy because on Wednesdays people are saying, okay, what are we going to make this weekend?
Right.
And on Wednesday, we all think that we can be a chef because we've seen all the shows on the Food Network. So we're going to make like beef stroganoff with, you know, risotto and all this other stuff. And then on Saturday morning, we realized that we didn't buy all that stuff for everything that we
Right.
needed for the beef stroganoff.
We're going back to the Indian restaurant near me.
Exactly. Or we're saying, like, what can we grill? You know,
Yeah.
or what's easy to prepare. And so then the food videos on Saturdays are always quicker. Friday night videos for food are breakfast burritos.
Right.
And breakfast pizzas. And I saw one, and I actually watched it. It was like you take a muffin pan, and you put scrambled eggs in the muffin pan, and then you put vegetables in there, and you bake it. Friday night, I thought for sure I was going to make it on Saturday morning. Then I get up on Saturday morning, I'm like, you know, scrambled eggs are fine. We don't need to get the whole muffin tin out. But having that analytics, knowing what people are clicking on, I think is just really just fascinating.
Right. Like Domino's, an example with Domino's, through data realized that, you know, when it rained, people didn't want to go out, they ordered pizza. So now, I don't know if they're still doing this, but as I read the case study, they would pump up their spend. Like like automatically, if it was raining in Denver, it never rains here in Phoenix, so you don't have to worry about that, but they would pump up their spend in Denver on a rainy day. And that, you know, alone made their advertising that much more effective on a, you know, cost per order. And again, all done by algorithms. It would be inefficient for people to be sitting there and cutting data, you know, 100 different ways, but it's all machine learning. And just makes your advertising more
And that is
effective.
fascinating, that to be able to sit back, and it's like one of the careers I've talked about. I mean, you know, so often people come up to me like, you know, what should I study? And they're, you know, 18, 19. I'm like, data analytics.
Yes.
I mean, if you're looking for a career for the future, this is where it's at. Mary, thanks for joining us. It's been so great to see you and give you a tour of our brand new studios. And in case you'd like to know more about advertising with the Kim Komando Show, just head over to komando.com. That's komando.com. And once you're there, just hit the bottom and there's a link that says advertise. And thanks for watching.